If you're just joining us, a very warm welcome to you. We're starting this morning's conversation now. My guests are here. Barrister Godwin Ogboji is joining us for this conversation. It's our first meeting this year, so Happy New Year to you, sir.
Same to you, sir.
Mr. Soji Apampa is Executive Director of the Integrity Organization, which is an anti-corruption research, consulting and advocacy group. Mr. Apampa, Happy New Year to you too, sir.
And the same to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Gentlemen, no doubt the anti-corruption war of the government will definitely be one of the challenges it will face this year. For obvious reasons, one of the three cardinal programs of the government is to fight corruption. Fight corruption, tackle the economy, and then security. Check insecurity. We've been staying with this issue of we've stayed with the issue of security for the whole of last week. We're looking at corruption this week. Just how correct is that assertion that no doubt how to go about the anti-corruption war will be a major challenge for the government, is it?
You can't overstate it. That will be a very major war for the government, and it will be a Herculean tax also. Why do I say it's going to be a Herculean tax? Because corruption, whether you like it or not, have been entrenched in the system. That the society now sees corruption as a norm. And if it comes to that level, it's very unfortunate. But we cannot just continue that way. That is why the fight is supported. But let the fight be a fight that is just, fair, and all-embracing. Let the fight be that it brooks no friends or foes. Let the fight be a fight that no matter who is involved, highly placed, relative, friends, whatever the person is, should also be involved. If it is seen that way, then the generator of Nigerians will key into it. But if it is prejudiced, biased, or perceived in any form of or manner that it is persecutory, it is selective, it is against a certain set of persons, then you have challenges in fighting it. But we must note it, that even though today we can say some is selective, I believe it is selective. I believe it is skewed towards certain type of person. But the most important thing I will also consider is that even though it's selective, it's against certain persons, but those persons cannot be exonerated. They were actually corrupt, they were involved, they are caught in their hands right in the jar, so they ought to be dealt with. But also on the flip side of it, you are now seeing where allegations are made against persons in government, close persons to the president, persons in APC. Those also should be touched. And I'm telling you, when I say...
Would that be why it will be a challenge?
That is why it will be a challenge. Overcome this
public perception.
Exactly. Not even public. You can say public, but the real perception. I don't look at it. It's public. It's the real perception.
Perception may be real, may be imagined.
So let us...
Public perception.
very well then. So if you can overcome that, me and you can then join this fight in corruption.
Okay. Mr. Apampa, anti-corruption will be a challenge to the government, not just because it's one of its cardinal programs, and probably the government will want to drive it further to be able to count the gains at the end of the day, even only for the purposes of re-election campaigns and all of that. But because the fight is getting to some very critical stage, where you have three arms of government, and one arm of government branches out, and it says, I want to do this, and it's taking on the other two arms of government, it's going to be a challenge.
I think I should introduce another dimension. I think the government will find it very difficult to deal with the economy if they're unable in tandem to deal with corruption. Okay. Because if you do not look at those who are benefiting from the forex regime that has been put in place, and those who are benefiting from the misfortune of Nigerians at the moment, it would be very difficult to turn the hands of time around on the economy. It would be, if you look at those who are so used to living off the misery of Nigerians, for example, some civil servants who then ensure that budgets are not effective, that you don't get the budgetary outcome that you've pushed, then how do you stimulate economic activity in the areas that were intended? So you cannot separate the war against corruption from the efforts to improve the economy. You also cannot sustain the kind of gains that they have had against Boko Haram if you don't deal with corruption. Who is supplying arms to whom? how are arms getting into the country?
Yeah.
How are they getting into the wrong hands? Who is involved? Who looked the other way? So you gain the victory now. How do you sustain and maintain that victory if you don't deal with corruption? So I would like to suggest that corruption is going to loom very large. The issue this year, not only for the reasons that you have already mentioned, but also because of these other areas where people will put the government under pressure to show some results. It would be very difficult to do it without dealing with corruption.
Okay, still identifying the challenges to the issue of corruption. Would the public to also be a challenge? How to convince a public that is more or less very cynical about this fight in the first place?
Of course.
A public that doesn't see itself as the victim of corruption, but will rather lie behind the accused persons, applaud them, and deride government that is fighting on their behalf.
My opponents will say is that it's not seen as a norm, which is very unfortunate. As you rightly pointed out, it is my man. So if he gets to Gbenga now, yes, one way or the other to get. No. If he gets to Gbenga to get to me, so why will I now join in prosecuting Gbenga? Sure. That is a fortunate scenario we have come into in this country in the fight against corruption. But now, the last time I was in your studio last year, we discussed about whistleblowing. Yeah. If that can be taken effectively, and it show that whistleblowing is not just a fast, let's not just implement this regulation so that people will think we are fighting it. And it's taken to the whole that any person that actually brings to new complaint, such complaints are investigated and punishment meted at whoever is complained. I can assure you the fact will come with a certain level of credence that people will now key into. Because the city, as you rightly say, because if you are corrupt today in this AIT and people in AIT don't give you out, how will we know you are corrupt? Then apart from the citizenry, now we now have to have laws. Because the impunity, I keep on someone talk about corruption. Yeah. You are living about impunity. Impunity, for me, is even the worst problem than corruption. Why do I say so? If I, Godwin Ogboji, will damn the consequences, because there are laws, there are regulations, there are penalties, and there are punishments for my erring, and I can damn it, the money meant for a particular project, as you are seeing happening in the IDP, as you rightly pointed out, where people that are suffering from the misfortune of corruption are still not saying anything about the society keeping quiet. The IDP, where the whole Secretary of the Federal Government is indicted with verifiable evidence, not hearsay, not permutation, not speculation, but verifiable evidence, and nothing seemingly is done. Something is fundamentally wrong. For the breach of trust, that give you this responsibility to be in charge of this, you cannot work contract to yourself without fearing any consequences. And you can see it going now. We are now setting up commission, query to be issued. People are sitting down to talk about it for over how many years that we have not heard anything about, months, and nothing has been done concretely. So if such impede, because tomorrow, if nothing happens and it's shielded, and everybody applaud him, and you forget about it, because the problem in Nigeria is to have this amnesia that after a while, the bigger will come out and forget what has happened again. Why will we not continue? So if impunity is removed from the system, that no matter who you are, you dare not act contrary to certain laid down rules and regulations and laws, then we can now start fighting corruption properly. And then the citizens will now be confident, because now, if I've seen this type of level of impunity, like Secretary of the Federal Government of the Federation, it's alleged to have awarded contract to itself, collected money, and evidence are in the purview of the public, and nothing is done to the Secretary of the Federal Government. A committee is set up by whoever is involved, and is generated or left to go off the hook or slap at the wrist. Then tomorrow, why will I, as a citizen, key into this fight against corruption? Why will I not look for opportunities to also damn the consequences and do what will now enrich myself?
Or something worse. You said much earlier that corruption will loom large this year. I have been thinking, why would that happen? Will it be, again, as a result of one of the obstacles we already identified, that of getting the public to actually own this process as their own, that's the process of fighting corruption as their fight, as their struggle? Because even right now, many of the tweets that are pouring in here, you'll be shocked if I read some of them out. Like somebody said that there's no anti-corruption war in Nigeria at this present time. We are just chasing shadows. And I could go on and on, like 3 tweets that are staring me in the face. All of them are very cynical. Don't believe that anything is going on at all.
Well,
the challenge of getting the public to own this process, how would that be?
the starting point to getting the public, we have missed that one. And why? Because if you want people to drop corruption, you need to convince them of what life would be like without corruption.
So at what point it will miss that point? Did we miss the opportunity?
When the administration was coming in,
Okay.
if you say you're coming in to fight corruption,
And you
so
campaign with it as a campaign strategy,
if
and
I
people
say-
voted for you.
so if I then drop corruption, what will my life be like? What is going to change if I am not corrupt or if I do not engage in corruption? What am I going to get? Have we painted the picture of what future there is? Because there's so many Nigerians who have known no other way of life apart from seeing corruption going on around them. There's so many Nigerians like that. So except the government is able to articulate where we're all going in the fight against corruption and communicate what each of the different publics need to do. For example, what do religious bodies need to do to stop corruption? What does business need to do? What do NGOs need to do? What do civil servants need to do? What do religious authoritational rulers, what do they need to do? Except it is clear and you get them to subscribe to that future that you're painting, then it's a war that you're prosecuting on your own. Now, if you're prosecuting this war on your own, and the citizens have therefore become bystanders, and they're only looking, then it is between you and whoever else you're going after. And it's very difficult to go after yourself. So it is most likely that you will go after people who are at least a bit removed from you. And if you're going after them, it will immediately be branded as political. And it is a negative spiral that people will then think it is a political witch hunt. We're not really serious. It's not really meant to change anything. Otherwise, why have we not brought out a national strategy to combat corruption that articulates very clearly where we're going, what all stakeholders need to do, so whether government is acting or not, they can take up their own part and do it. So right now, unfortunately, even though there's a lot of political will on the part of this government, and there's a lot of public support, at least there was, when they were coming in for the fight against corruption, I think we're losing that momentum, and it's being frittered away. And if care is not taken, this administration, on the record of dealing with corruption, will look no different to its predecessors. And yet it had the opportunity to really make a difference, because many Nigerians actually believe that President Buhari has the will to fight corruption, and that a good number of people in his cabinet are on board with that. You know, so there is a big opportunity to deal with the issue. But let me just say this finally. If the water faucet is broken, and all you do is take a whip to those who are coming to fetch water from it, anybody who is standing by will say, you're not serious now. Yeah. Why don't you just change the thing and lock it? Then we know that you really want to stop people from fetching water from this. So until we start seriously preventing corruption by studying the schemes people are using, dismantling those schemes, and ensuring we reduce the risk of those schemes continue to propagate, then we're not really showing the seriousness that will convince people.
Are you referring to the argument that government generally, the ministries, the departments and agencies of government are configured in such a way that they are configured to deliver nothing but failure and deliver dividends not to the people but to the pockets of those who manage the system? Because that has been an argument as well.
I think that is a corruption of the order.
Yeah, that each ministry has to develop a template that best suits its operations with the sole aim of blocking those loopholes and those leakages.
Let me suggest how that can happen to get us away from that mindset. If the president were to come out tomorrow and say, if you are a corruption risk, any MDA that is a corruption risk, we will not release your money to you in full. Others who are not a corruption risk can get 80% of your budget. You will give you 10%. We'll see how you spent it. We monitor, and then we release another 10%. No chief executive would like to operate under that kind of situation. None of them. Then you will elevate the problem to the level of the chief executive of the MDAs for them to say, what have we not done? What should we be putting in place? And they have to show the evidence in order to qualify to get releases. And the government has done it. This administration has done it. Around the release of money for the bailout, they gave conditions to the states, and not all states were able to meet those conditions. Why can't we do it with the civil service as well? That way, you start to promote, even if you didn't do it on the negative side, you can say there is an extra budget that we will keep here for those who actually demonstrate that they're compliant. Let them access more money to do even more good.
But there's a fundamental challenge.
And it's easy to identify those corruption-prone agencies of government.
No, but why will you come and say there's a corruption-prone agency? What have you done about the persons doing this perpetuating corruption?
That's what we are saying.
No, if you say just stop funds going to parastatals,
my argument is you can't do one without the other. And that we have done a lot of sanctions and enforcement without prevention. So sanctions and enforcement, that is very good. But prevention is wise. Otherwise,
for
after every 4 years, is a new set of actors that we're talking about.
For example, if you type the news on pension management sector, for instance, will it be easy for a chief executive of a pension?
How do you not tie? Because what you say that I'm a bit not comfortable with. Let's give an example of AIT. And the requisite fund that is supposed to come to AIT is not given. We might not have focus. We might not have the money issue. We might not have Kakaki. Then we'll just have maybe the money issue or news. Will that now give AIT the content? The point is that if there's a budget for AIT, just as you rightly pointed out, drop the news.
It wasn't a general.
I know corruption-prone. So the point is, these corruption-prone parastatals, ministries, departments are headed by individuals that are punishable. They are not above the law. And that's why I said it's impunity. If it's not, if you remove impunity, yes, I subscribe to your argument. If
it is not just impunity. My point of departure is also the statement that he made about the government itself being rigged to work a certain way. So there is a systemic problem.
I agree.
So even if the chief executive is moral, but the system is such that it spits out those who try and do the right thing, then it's not just that the simple case of seeing somebody and saying this one is corrupt, we therefore remove him.
Let me tell you something.
It's not as simple as that.
See, I think it's as simple as that. Why I say so is, I was in your...
These are decade-old problems.
Let's face it. It's not because we are not trying to do the right thing. The last time I was on your program, there was a technical problem here. And you took steps immediately. And I'm here enjoying focus today. If you have said, okay, no problem, let's leave it at that, don't do it next time, I did not take the drastic step you took on air, off air, here. I'm sure today, maybe they would have brought music to be played in the studio along with the program going on. Why I'm saying this is that when you say system splits corruption, and you say they cannot beat, an average person in Nigeria now, chief executive of staffs now, a typical example, I was at the Supreme Court recently doing a matter, and processes filed. We are supposed to file 12 processes in the Supreme Court. We're supposed to file 21 processes now. We filed 21 processes. At the end of the day, the copies that will go to the justices of the Supreme Court, they're not in the files of the Supreme Court justices. And now, nobody's punished. Why will that not continue? Why I'm saying this, if processes are supposed to be in the files, are not in the files, and you query the Deputy Chief Registrar litigation, or Registrar litigation, because you can trace it, who is supposed to do this, and you suspend that person without pay, in this era of recession, will that not happen? So the point is, let's not take it as if it's something fantastic to be done. If punishment, that's why I say impunity is still the grand norm, because you know you do this thing and go scot-free. If punishment is melted out immediately as and when due, this punishment need not be going to prison or charging person to court. Person losing your job, being placed on suspension, interdiction, half pay, you will sit up because you not want your source of livelihood to be tampered with, because you have school fees, you have house rent, and you have feelings to deal with. But if when we say corruption-prone organization, parastatals, are we saying it's ghosts that perpetuate this corruption? They are individuals, and with this issue of BVN, with this issue of single children, with this issue of transparent banking, where we can see how money moves now, or process move, and then you check out, if I live here now, I have forms to fill now, you can trace and punish any person that is not doing his job. So if we now implement the internal regulations of the establishment, not even talking about prosecution of arrest or detention or jail, internal prosecution of basic disciplinary measures in the society and in the organization, I can assure you corruption will come to an end.
All right, let me read some tweets. Jask is saying, Mr. President is on the job, he is working, the problems are much and are decades problems, he need all hands on deck. And Lawa Babatunde is saying, good morning, focus Nigeria anti-graft war should be largely addressed by only the federal government. Should only be addressed by the federal government, but all Nigerians. Okay, should not only that. I think that's what it meant. God bless Nigeria. Let me see. These are retweeting. Mr. President. Okay, that's Yask also retweeted. Gbenga, let everybody support Mr. President in this fight against corruption. God bless Nigeria. That's under Chijoke. And Andrew Ogboro says, we need to ensure transparency in governance at all levels to tackle corruption. We need to strengthen our procurement process. All right, that's a very valid point you have made there, particularly on the issue of public procurement. We'll just come back to that shortly in the course of the discussion. You, Mr. Apampa, you talked much earlier about the absence of a clear strategy. Yes. Now, wouldn't that be a tragedy, really? The government, months after coming in, set up a presidential advisory committee headed by Professor Isi Sagi. In that committee, you have so many eminent Nigerians. Why should we still be talking of lack of a clear-cut strategy that Nigerians can see and engage with in all of this? Or why are we seeing the strategies coming out in piecemeal? Because just the other day, the government the government came out with this issue of whistleblowing policy, even in the absence of law and all of that. Are this the area where the government is just doing, using a kind of knee-jerk approach? Before
the new administration, there was already a draft strategy to combat corruption, actually, during the Goodluck Jonathan administration. Okay. But that administration decided not to push it forward.
Okay.
Then it got carried over into the new administration. It was reviewed again. It's been presented, and civil society is asking, why has the president not okayed the strategy? Because it has got.
Who drew up the strategy?
The strategy was drawn up first by an interagency task team with about 25 agencies that have an anti-corruption mandate. They did consultations with the judiciary, consultations with the private sector, consultations with civil society, and so on, to bring about at least a draft as a starting point. So there is something that the government, there is a draft.
Have you seen it? Or do you
yes.
have one?
Well, I don't know what version it is in right now, but
whichever
I do have
version
a
you have,
version.
Yes, I do have. Available to us?
Sure, certainly. Okay. So it's not that the Presidential Advisory Committee is not putting forward things, but the government, this is not a pronouncement that an advisory committee can make. This is something that the leader of the war against corruption should stand forward and say, this is what I want you to do. This is why, and that is why I put it back in the president's doorstep.
So what do we do now? If there's a strategy and we can't engage that strategy, does that show lack of will on the part of the government? Or again, are we finding it difficult to remove politics from the fight? Or is there a way politics has a domineering feature over the war?
I would like to suggest that perhaps if you look at the antecedents of Mr. President, he doesn't appear to be too communicative with citizens, and he doesn't appear to be too involved in interactions and back and forth with citizens.
Unfortunately, it's a government that doesn't permit dictating from the top to the lower rung of the ladder. So which is the style of military regime. Unfortunately, is in the system of government where You have to communicate where you have to discuss. Because in every I mean, at every point of the way, you must meet the people. It's a government of the people, by the people, and for them, for the people.
So only the people, therefore, acting in unison and calling for it, will actually get him to act. That is my position
but
on the
to bring
strategy.
to the people.
On the strategy,
yes.
On the strategy, I think that citizens and civil society groups need to be even more vocal than they have been.
I will not blame the government. At least the government brought in advisory committee. But as you really pointed out, you just answered the question yourself. The committee that's supposed to work for the generation of Nigerians to be apolitical, to be straight and just think about Nigeria and Nigeria alone, unfortunately, is political. Like the head, Professor Sagi, can you tell me in no sense of responsibility and fairness that Professor Sagi is actually for a fair fight against corruption? If it is not APC, then every other person should be corrupt. But if it is APC, every other person, look, his statements, his utterances, and his body language tells you that he has come to decimate PDP, unfortunately.
But it's just one out of so many.
No, but if you look at the committee, because he's the head of the committee and the way and manner the committee works.
Yeah.
Right?
You can't say that of Professor Odekule, for
but have you heard? I mean, I've heard Odekule at times. Yes, I've heard him severally, and then most often they part and parcel persons that have one misfortune or the other with the military, incarcerated, in prison for one thing or the other. At times, the way and manner they behave, I believe they have a vendetta against average Nigerians. The way and manner they talk, because if you see, like in political judgments, when unfortunately for the likes of Professor Sagi, with due respect to him, when clear judgment that I keep on saying when I come to argue that judgments are not based on morals or sentiments or emotions or the overwhelming generating statement by people. It's based on law. And when judgments are based on law, no matter how bad it is, unless you change the law, the judgment cannot be reversed. And you see the likes of Lagos having a judgment, and the likes of Sagi will come to hail it. And the likes of Akwa Ibom and Delta came on board, and the same Sagi will now castigate the decision of the Supreme Court. Then you see that, can this person be in the forefront of genuinely and fairly advising the president on anti-corruption? So with that mindset and that perception, which is real about the head of this anti-corruption board, what do you think will come out from the presidency? From the Anticorruption board that will benefit Nigeria? If in this sort of situation, no matter your disdain or dislike for persons, policies, parties, or individuals, you come ahead of above the board and put out things that will benefit Nigeria, I can assure you what to key in. Unfortunately, with my own personal opinion, the choice of Sagi as the head of that committee is wrong, because he's too partisan, too biased, and too prejudiced against certain persons and establishment, making it look that this wonderful establishment, because it's supposed to be a body that should formulate policy, as I really say, the strategy, if not for today, I'm not aware of any strategy on ground, but this now with the lack of Sagi, with his pedigree, and lack of Dekule, and lots of other persons in this committee, they should have brought us something that people will key into. But they have made it political, and it's making it very difficult to be able to look at what are we fighting, if not political witch hunt, perceived enemies, or distribution of any opposition that made the party APC still continue in power.
I think it would be terrible for this program to sit and suggest that there is such a great responsibility for the fight against corruption on the Presidential Advisory Committee itself, regardless of what we feel about certain persons in there. Let the owners of the fight against corruption, the leadership of it, take their leadership. The leadership is with the presidency. Let the real people involved in the fight, which is the people, let them drive the fight against corruption. If people are making technical inputs, then that is all well and good. And that is for Mr. President to decide how he takes whatever comes out of the Presidential Advisory Committee or doesn't take what comes out of there. But in a country where corruption is pervasive and it is everywhere, it would be like a madman that takes a whip to people in a marketplace of corrupt people, running around chasing everybody. If, along with trying to deal with impunity, you do not prevent corruption and you do not recruit public into the fight. Because if the public do not believe that this is their fight, If they do not support what is going on, then there is no chance that it will ever succeed.
That is the number one challenge that I'd like us to provide solution to. How do we make this anti-corruption war to be a war owned by all Nigerians and not a Buhari war, such that it's not seen from the prism of, if it's a Buhari war, then the victims must be enemies of Buhari, who naturally will be in opposing camp. Maybe naturally, because people around him cannot be the target. If it's a Buhari war, then it has to be his political enemies that will initially be the target of that war. How do we change that to a Nigerian war, a war that you and I have to fight, and not a war that President Buhari has to fight, so that it's much more enduring?
Yes. The first step, in my view, is that different groups should come together and create their own strategy. If this really is an administration...
Group,
yes, I'm coming. For example, civil society. If civil society feels that they can educate the public or that they can monitor the corruption schemes that the civil service is using and expose those things, it doesn't need Mr. President. People can start to do whatever it is they actually have the resources and the power to do. Corruption risk assessments can be done in the ministries, departments, and agencies, especially around service delivery, and we can start to expose where this is happening and then call on the government to make remedial action in those specific places. So I think civil society needs to become more vocal, as I said, on this issue, because this is a government that is unlikely to chase you for wanting to fight corruption, as opposed to some other administrations. Therefore, the space is available. Seize the space and do something with it, in my view.
I subscribe to what you say, but before then, I think he missed my precision on when you say, he now said the public, the NGO should fight or enlighten people, and that would be what would change. That's what I'm saying. The president cannot do everything. Even in your program, you have cameramen, you have producers, you have editors that will help you get your program perfect. The president also have bodies that will advise him, and these bodies can be in the forefront of dishing out
bodies that ordinarily, when they do their own duties, constitutionally assigned duties, without the president getting to know, is fighting corruption one way or the other.
But give and take, I think what he says is that the NGO is something that we have to deal with. It had gone beyond NGOs for only politics, NGO for fight against this, against that. You now have, because whether you like it or not, corruption has become so endemic. Like in the House of Rep of the US, there's a body set up by the House of Representatives, funded by them itself, that reports on the House of Rep that the Republican, the first day they came to the work, wanted to repeal. But that, because of the uproar of the society, they changed that and stepped it down. The government can also fund institutions apart from the NGOs, because the NGOs could be compromised. The NGOs could also run out of funds, because it's massive. When you talk about corruption, when people are making millions out of the system, it takes much money also to fight the system. The government can also form bodies that are independent, or support bodies that are independent with statutory funds to fight corruption, as they say, the NGO. I can also create and give the enabling environment. As I really say, there's a space now to fight corruption. So bodies should now spring up. And it's of course now we have more than 100 NGOs that are for only election, which is commendable, yes, to give us credible election. But we also now key into an environment that is killing the system. Because if corruption is there, you cannot even have credible elections. So you also have NGOs that will now have not even massive NGOs that will just say fight corruption. You can just say NGOs on Ministry of Health, because there are a lot of parasites in Ministry of Health that now monitor their day-to-day activities and their income and expenditure and where corruption can go. And if you expose this, like now the issue of the secretary of the federal government, yes, everything is being done to sweep it under the carpet, but the noise is still on. So it's keep on saying that if you ring this bell continuously, like if there's an NGO that is from Minister of Health, Minister of Justice, and ring this bell continuously, even though this administration will not do it, somebody somewhere will be there.
Or blowing the whistle.
Okay, thank you. It's not bell again. It's whistle. So we should blow. Continue blowing this whistle.
But when you talk of bell now, if it be more than 5% too,
so they will continue blowing the whistle in particular department, parastatals, and agencies. I think at the end of the, because as you ring this bell, you're also documenting facts.
Whistle.
As you blow this whistle, you also have facts that will back up your allegation. Let it not be witch hunting, but credible, verifiable evidence on the table. And I think people will also be afraid. Because by the time I say you call my name, I've been corrupt, I bring forward I cannot dispute. Yeah. The perception of you about me might change, even though the management is not doing anything. Your perception about me might change, and the regards you have for me might also dwindle.
The war against corruption will have a new phase when majority of Nigerians are on one side and they believe that this day we are the victims. The other day I read the report of how much we have lost in oil revenue since independence, $400 billion. And I was just imagining what $400 billion, the difference it would have made in the infrastructural outlay of Nigeria if it had not gone the way it had gone. So Nigeria, the day you have the majority of Nigerians singing, with the same, on the same side on this issue of corruption, probably that will be the day. How do we ensure that? How do we change the public perception of corruption to see it as public enemy number one, and that all of us are victims?
I think the first thing is we have to change our narrative. People are tired of hearing of corruption. People are tired of hearing these huge figures in the press, 400 billion. Whether it's even 400 billion ants or 400 billion grains of sand, it means nothing to anybody. They just flip the page of the newspaper to the next article, and they'll be more happy to read an entertainment story or the other. It's time to start talking about building integrity. Actually building, we use the term institutions and systems a lot, but we don't talk about how to build them. We don't talk, and for me, the first thing is identifying where the weaknesses are, where the vulnerabilities are, assessing those things, and building remedial action to make sure it cannot happen, and strengthening compliance. Because no matter how many people you throw in jail, if you do not close that tap, more people will come with their buckets, regardless. Even if you say death penalty, some people will still come with their buckets to fetch because it's flowing. So we're not stupid. So we will bring our bowls. That's the attitude of Nigerians. And why they don't want to talk about their relations and so on, or anybody else who's on their side, as you mentioned earlier, is because they feel that corruption can still work for them. So why should I be the one to spoil it? It will soon be my turn. I will also hit it big. So except you start to close the loopholes, the schemes that were possible before TSA are no longer possible now. You have not changed the morality of any actor. You have strengthened the system. You have prevented that type from happening. That's my argument, that with enforcement and sanctions on one hand, you must strengthen prevention. If you do that, the fight will be more credible and Nigerians will believe you more.
And Nigerians, NGOs will probably have been of veritable tools here, except that we also have NGOs that are either set up for the purposes of defending those that have been accused of corruption and all of that. I'm taking that view from the tools of Godwin here, not your own Godwin.
Thank you.
You say NGO are now indirect public relations officers of corrupt people in Nigeria. He listed some NGOs, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to read those lists.
But those ones cannot be sustained. Those ones will figure out in no time. But if you have variable NGOs that you have some here that is one of the executives that comes there, they are doing well and they continue to do well. This one is a matter of time. Either particular public officer leaves office, it will fizzle out on its own. But most importantly, in addition to what he is saying, is the fact that we have to have good governance. If we have a governance, a government, a governor, a president, a local government chairman that come on board and carry the whole entire locality as its constituents without unnecessary prejudice to a particular group of making some group more important than the other, they will have it. That's when your corruption will not appeal to me again. And Gbenga, my taxman, is there. If carry person alone do things justly and fairly, and I assure you the bid for corruption will be.
And final comments on one just one more issue, and Mr. Apampa will also have his comment on that. The fight this year is getting to a very critical stage. If you are fighting corruption and you have the head of an arm of the government, deputy head of an arm of government, and then in the other arm of government, you are picking very senior members of that arm of government. I'm talking of the judiciary, all of them being prosecuted for corruption. Then you just must be very clinical in your act.
Apart from being clinical in your act, you also have to be transparent in your act. That if in your own arm of government also, which you are seeing now, clear, verifiable allegations are laid against persons in your government, and unlike other government, you ask them to be suspended or removed from office, up till now you are seeing on the committee report of that person. It shouldn't be so. You should also now, as a let it not bloom, let it not bloom, or let it not succeed. Ensure that as you deal with other arms of government, do your own arm of government also, so that it will be transparent and fair to all.
Mr. Apampa, President of Senate, Deputy Senate President, 2 justices of Supreme Court, several High Court justices, all facing corruption trial. That president must have balls, and he must be ready to face all the odds.
It's always been said, example is leadership. And that is the most powerful thing that people are going to hold this administration up to in 2017.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's leave it here. So many tweets coming in. Okpeyemi Y says, I love your guests today. The fight against corruption is a long-term project. We must involve everyone, including children. Okay.
Good one.
Yes.
Good one. Very wonderful. Let's start from primary school and nursery schools.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your contribution this morning. Barrister Godwin Ogboji has joined us for this morning's discussions as we continue on our expectations for 2017 and the likely challenges the government will face this year. And we are taking on the second one this week. That's the issue of corruption. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Soji Apampa, who is Executive Director, the Integrity Organization, which is an anti-corruption research, consulting, and advocacy organization. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And thank you, too, for investing your time with us, particularly those of you who have enriched the discourse by sending in tweets to us and, of course, raising questions of their own. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow, God willing. Enjoy the rest of the day. My name is Gbenga.